Hello, welcome to the Growing Design podcast, where we help you grow your design agency. If you want to learn how to price your services, how to sell your expertise, and how to attract the right type of clients, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Ed Orozco. Let's get started. And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Growing Design. Today, we're going to be talking about sales enablement with Crystal Nikosey. Crystal, can you introduce yourself for the audience, please?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ed. I appreciate it. Crystal Nikosey. I'm a sales enablement leader. And I have been doing sales enablement for around 5 years or so. I have a very heavy sales background as well. So I always like to say that I'm a salesperson at heart. Prior to getting into sales enablement, I was a seller. So I started out as a BDR, worked through the sales path, eventually becoming an enterprise AE. And, I had sort of all of this knowledge and what do I do with it? And didn't want to be a manager. So sales enablement was this kind of cool thing coming out into, with large organizations at that time. And it was something so new and wasn't even defined. But what we did know about it, I thought it would be really exciting and I could pass along everything I had learned. So got into sales enablement, and it is sort of now my, new passion. Because I still get to work with salespeople, but I also get to align, other departments and create this sort of ecosystem where, the entire organization is aligned. So it's good.
How would you explain sales enablement to someone who has no idea about sales?
Yeah. So, I think you're going to hear a lot of different, definitions of sales enablement. And it really depends on the organization, the different nuances to sales enablement. But I would say just a very basic, simplistic explanation is it's just an iterative process where sales reps are being provided with, what they need to have a better sales conversation. So that could include tools, that could include, data analysis, it could include content, training, and then obviously, sales enablement kind of serves as that bridge between, marketing and sales, product and sales, not so much with HR, but learning and development and sales. So it's, there's quite a bit to it, but really at the end of the day, it comes down to helping those sales reps have better sales conversations.
Gotcha. So do you think sales enablement is only for big corporations or big sales team with a lot of people, or do you think there's a part of sales enablement that would make sense for smaller teams, like say startups or agencies? In the case of a lot of people in our audience are coming from the UX agency background. So do you think there's a value in applying sales enablement in a small team?
I think so. Absolutely. Anytime you have a salesperson, there's always going to be, a small amount of sales enablement that's involved. You may want to try to get, an existing employee to maybe wear another hat, just to save on cost. But, you could think about sales enablement in terms of just that, just providing better messaging, right? Helping them have better sales conversations. And the way that you can, do that, again, is with content. I think a lot of organizations, even large organizations, small, startups, the biggest issue that has always been there is that when content is put out, whether it's on a new feature or a new product update or, a rollout of something, new, it's always delivered to sales with a marketing slant. And, salespeople are a different animal. You have to be able to, they're essentially like your customer, right? You have to be able to speak to them in a way that they get it, in a way that, it makes sense for them. It kind of solves that so what for them. And I think marketing has always struggled with that. So I think with any startup that, you really should start there. Any content, any conversation, guides or scripts, learning your buyer. I think all of that just, you can do it. You just need to keep in mind that you have to deliver it in a sales slant and not so much in a marketing slant, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I was just kind of thinking that when you're talking about the way marketing communicates, it's a more sort of like salesy type of use of the language. So they're trying to simplify the concept for a more, I guess if I'm looking at a sales funnel, marketing is always at the top. So the message that they have a very simplified version of the message. But when you're already having a sales conversation, the buyer is at a later stage in their decision process, which means that the amount of details that they need and has to be deeper. They need to understand better what you're selling. Would you agree?
100%. So, a couple of statistics are floating out there, but 70% of all target buyers, they have already made a decision on what to buy, or even who to buy it for by the time they ever talk to a sales rep. And so, it's like, how do you solve for that, right? How do you solve so that way when the salesperson finally does talk to them, how can we sort of leverage getting that time back, or helping them to maybe shift that last 30% into, making a buying decision for us. And it's, it is sort of like it is a balance of, great, marketing material and sort of the sales conversations. But I think what it really boils down to is understanding your target buyer, right? Really understanding your target buyer. I'm talking, create a playbook, right? Create a sales playbook for your target buyer, or your persona. If you're, selling to, just the global head of, sales development, you want to know what is their pain? What are their KPIs? What are their use cases? What are, any objections? Who is the competition? You want to have all of that completely outlined before you can even begin creating content and having, great sales conversations, because you're building content around that. So I would say, definitely start with that target buyer and understanding them, completely.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up understanding the buyer, because usually the more you understand your buyer, the more specific your offerings are going to be. The more you understand the buyer, the more it makes sense for you to develop your product in a way that meets their needs as a buyer. So something, a recurring theme in the podcast is recommending for agencies and freelancers and consultants and whatnot to specialize, to figure out how to sort of cater to a smaller portion of the market, but better. So be more specific for less people and totally dominate that small niche. And then, as you grow, you can expand and maybe go after other parts of the market. But at the beginning, it's very important for you to be very specific, because the most specific you are, the easiest it is for you to develop a more convincing, I don't know if convincing is the word, but a more powerful message.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, something else to also consider is, let's say you have a team of, 3 or 4 sales reps, right? Pretty small. They're doing their own prospecting and they're closing deals. Something else you could do is each individual seller could actually specialize in a particular persona or a particular industry. So that way, you're sort of attacking a couple of different verticals. at the same time. Of course, that does involve, a little more content, a little more training by the sales enablement person, but you could also consider that as well. But yes, you're 100% spot on. If you do not understand your buyer, there is absolutely nothing that you could say to them that is going to, get them on your side. They're going to give you the time to, partner with them. Your product could be amazing, but if, you don't know how to communicate the value to them, then there's nothing, your competition is going to win every single time. So it's absolutely critical to make sure that messaging is on point, that the market, the marketing research on buyers is always and readily available. And then where sales enablement comes in is being able to take that sort of buyer intelligence and all of that data that marketing has already, put together, and to be able to sort of, convert it into what is going to be the so what of it for my sales team. How is my sales team going to be able to take all of this data and run with it in their sales conversations? So yeah, so it's really, you're that bridge. You're kind of the, sales enablement is really holding kind of all these departments together. Because really, when you think about it, when you think about the marketing, discipline and sales disciplines, they're so different, right? They weren't built to work together. When you have you think about marketing people, and they are, they love playing by the rules. They are more long-term thinking. And you have a salesperson who is the complete opposite, right? They're more opportunistic. They think short-term. They don't necessarily like playing by the rules. So you're dealing with two completely different mindsets. So it's really important. And that's going to be reflected in content that's created, right? So it's really important to have sort of that middle who can take all of that marketing, and then sort of it comes out the other end where salespeople can consume it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, totally does. I love the term buyer intelligence. It implies that you're actually understanding who you're doing business with.
Yeah.
Can we clarify a little bit the concept of playbook? You
Sure.
mentioned that when you were saying that, different sales rep can go into different niches. I would think that each one of them would have their own separate playbook. Would that be the case?
It depends on the organization, right? Some organizations focus more on, a broad sort of grand sales playbook. And some organizations, definitely get, more granular in terms of, each vertical has its own playbook. So if you're selling to HR will have its own playbook. If you're selling to marketing will have its own playbook. If you're selling to IT will have its own playbook. So it really depends on, what industries you're selling to. If you only have one industry, then you have one playbook. But if you're selling to, multiple industries, I personally recommend having a playbook for each. Now, you also need to think about, so a sales playbook can consist of, how does the sales rep do their job? What is sort of their process look like? What tools are they using? What is the process of entering in a new lead into Salesforce? Or, so you have kind of that element of a sales playbook, and that can definitely be more broad because that's going to apply to everybody, right? It's a one size fits all there. Here's how you do the steps 1 through 20 and here, you're kind of off to the races. But then the other element to playbooks is, again, like what I said. So HR, something that we did at Tribyl, which I'm sure you'll remember, is we developed and created, playbooks based on industry or based on your target persona. So if an organization was selling to HR, we got very detailed and, what are the pains that are prevalent for a CHRO? What are they measured by? What is going to drive them to make a buying decision? What value proposition is going to resonate with them? What common objections are, our sales reps going to see from this buyer specifically? Because a common objection for from a CHRO is going to be extremely different from an objection from a CMO, and you have to understand as a sales rep how to navigate both of those. So that's why I would recommend, for each target persona to create your own individual playbook. And that means by using some type of codification or, taxonomy. But you've got to touch on, all of those things like, pain, KPIs, use cases, value prop, objections, partners, and even any content that can be used specifically for that persona. So build out, those playbooks.
You're saying a lot of very interesting things that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are not even familiar with. Just the concept of a playbook, I can guarantee that it's not something that it's been done on most agencies. So let me see if I got the concept correctly. So a sales playbook is nothing more than just a list of everything that you're going to need in order to move the lead or move the prospect through your sales funnel. So if you have a sales funnel that consists of 5 steps, step number 1 probably is going to be the first introductory call, and you're going to mention this and this and this, and you're going to probably send them this presentation, and you're going to probably send them this article. Step number 2, you're going to send this other presentation and maybe mention this other thing in the call. Step number, and so on and so forth. So it's basically like a set of instructions together with the content that you're going to be using in those instructions for whoever is conducting the sales process to be able to keep moving that lead through the pipeline.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in a nutshell, yes, that's what it is. But a playbook is also giving you, the ammunition, if you will, right, to be able to have better conversations. So it's not only, you don't want to, treat every, buyer the same, meaning the same exact process. It's going to be a little bit different. What is going to be different, obviously, is the conversations, the type of conversations that you're having. But a playbook is where if a new hire came in and they didn't really know anything about the business, you could take that playbook and say, hey, one of our target personas is the CHRO. So here is our sales playbook. Read it, study it, and at the end of reading it and studying it, they will have a much better idea of all the processes that they need to do within existing tools that you have. They will have a much better idea on who is the CHRO, what makes them a target persona for us. How can I influence their buying decision? How can I resonate with what is top of mind for them? They will be able to have all of that knowledge by the time they're completed with the sales playbook.
Gotcha. So who would be responsible for doing all this, for putting together all that information?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's sales enablement. If the sales enablement function is not already implemented, I've seen some organizations, somebody in marketing is typically handling it. I don't see a lot of salespeople, which is really interesting. I don't see a lot of organizations where sales will start this process. It's usually marketing that will start this process for sales. And a lot of it is because marketing has so much more data on the buyer, right? They already have access to all of sort of that buyer and market intelligence. So it's a little bit easier for them to put it together. But if, obviously bringing somebody in who is sales enablement focused is going to be, your best bet.
So what you're saying is the first step before you even think of implementing sales enablement is to really understand your target audience. So go out there and research the hell out of your target persona.
100%. So really, the way that I like to think about it is if you do not have a sales enablement function, there's, three sort of, big pillars that I would say. And then there's a lot of little branches that sort of come off of each. But I would say the first thing you need to do is sit down as an organization and create some goals, right? Have, every department head there and, marketing, sales, product, and learning and development, and come together and create some common goals that you want to achieve, and really have it be revenue centric, instead of marketing centric or instead of sales centric. There's got to be a broader vision there. And that's why you're seeing a lot of job titles coming out now where you have like a CRO, a chief revenue officer. You're having, sales enablement managers, who have revenue somewhere in their job title, because a lot of teams are now coming together and saying, we can't have sales enablement be, a slant in any way. So the one common thing that we can agree on is revenue. So create some of those goals, talk about, metrics, talk about, some indicators that are going to help you achieve your goal. But that's sort of first pillar. The second, I would say, is definitely understanding your buyer, right? A full analysis into your target personas, because you need to learn how to have a conversation with them. And marketing is a great resource for that because they already have all of that intelligence. They just may not know how to put it in a way that is going to help the sales rep have a better conversation. So once you have a full understanding there, then you need to look at the other pillar, which is your content, right? You need to look at what type of content do I need to put out? Is it, blog? Is it, landing pages from, is it a chat bot on the website? Tools, what content, tools, and resources do you need to put together that make the most sense for your team and, for the organization? And then, once you and then, like I said, there's a lot of different branches that come off of each pillar. But then, once you've created that, then what that allows for you to do is to really create almost like an SLA between sales and marketing, right? To where you're really defining, creating a lot of definitions. What is an MQL? What is an SQL? What does, sales accepted mean? It allows for you to build something out like that. And then I think once you sort of have all of that in place, then, you have a pretty good foundation for getting a sales enablement function going. And at least having that understanding of what sales enablement really means, and what it can do for your organization. And then, of course, as time goes on, a lot of teams will develop things based on, what they're seeing and, how they need to pivot and shift.
I love that you are mentioning that revenue is the one common denominator that everyone should be aimed for in the organization, and stop thinking about, visits to our website or downloads or, those metrics that ultimately, if you don't have transactions, if you don't have revenue, you're not really achieving anything.
Exactly.
And that's the one thing that all departments have in common. So I think it's super important for all departments, especially sales, marketing, and product, or in the case of agencies, sales, marketing, and delivery, or production, or whoever creates the whatever you sell, to get together and understand what you're selling to whom and what's the best way to cater to their needs. Another thing, you mentioned a few acronyms that I'm sure a lot of people are not aware of. There's SLA and MQL. I know MQL is a marketing qualified lead.
Yes.
And then SLA.
So, and SLA is just a service level agreement. So it basically, you find that, common even between, a salesperson and their customer. It's basically just, you're listing out everything that you agree on and everything that's going to happen, And that's why I say, it allows for sales and marketing to create that, service level agreement between, the two departments. So that way everyone sticks to kind of what they're doing and they understand. I would encourage that. I would definitely encourage that.
So that's like the rules of the game.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's how sales and marketing will work together. Sort of like standard operating procedure, SOP.
Yeah, exactly.
To throw in a few more acronyms. And then MQL, correct me if I'm wrong, that's marketing qualified lead means that to marketing standards and based on what marketing considers a quality lead, that's someone who should go into the sales part of the funnel. So it goes from the top of the funnel to the sales part of the funnel.
Exactly. So if there's an email campaign going out and you have someone that's interested, they fill out, whatever form, or they come to you, that sort of inbound marketing, or that inbound lead, I should say, then that could be considered an MQL, right? A marketing qualified lead. And then they would then, push it through the funnel to most likely, a BDR or an SDR of an organization. So business development representative or sales development rep, because that function and that role is your first salesperson that will talk to the client. Typically after that, it then gets passed along to, an account executive, right? It could be a field sales rep. It could be an inside sales rep. There's, again, depending on the size of your organization and how things are structured. But then that lead then moves to an SQL, which is a sales qualified lead. So, there's different sort of, stages, if you will, of the leads that get passed through. Once the BDR or SDR sort of qualifies that particular lead, then they'll pass it along to their AE. And then their AE will say, okay, this is great. I set up a discovery call with them, so I'm going to accept this lead. I'm going to accept this. And then that's how your BDR and SDR get comped, and you can travel this lead throughout the entire sales process.
I want to point out that sorry, what's that?
If that's helpful.
Oh yeah, very. I just want to point out that now that you walked us through the process, each one of these steps is a filter. So in each one of these steps, there's an opportunity for you to discover that the lead that came through your marketing might not be the right fit for your organization, because believe it or not, a lot of UX agencies have the tendency to just work with whoever comes, whoever rings on their door, whoever writes a message on their website. It doesn't matter, and it shouldn't be the case, because you might end up working with a client that you don't know how to service properly, or it might be a client that for whatever reason is not a right fit for your organization. Either it's someone who doesn't have the budget to work with you, or is someone that requires a type of technology that you're not familiar with. For whatever reason, there can be thousands of reasons why a lead might not be right for your organization. So it's very important for listeners to understand that in your process, you need to put in place these filters so that you can make sure that the person, as the lead moves through your sales funnel, you are filtering those who are not are the right fit. Because if you agree to work with them knowingly that it's not going to be a right fit, you're going to have a lot of problems, and that's not going to be a profitable project, and that's going to be a pain in the ass to manage, and that's what turns into a nightmare project that never ends, that keeps changing, that runs out of budget, that you never get paid for, and nobody wants that.
Absolutely. So SDRs and BDRs, they typically will ask a series of maybe 5 to 6 questions. They try to have really good conversations to fully understand, what are some initiatives that, that person is, or that buyer is trying to, accomplish, or trying to make successful. And if it makes business sense, if the buyer is they have the budget, they have the need, they could have a compelling event happening or an initiative, then at that point, that's when it moves along to, like I said, the AE, and then the AE will usually always conduct a much deeper discovery, show the product if necessary. But by the time it's to the AE, it's a pretty, it's a solid lead, a solid quality lead.
And would all of those filters and parameters be included in the playbook?
Yeah, absolutely. So you definitely need to define, what all of those mean. What is it? What does an MQL look like? What does an SQL look like? A sales qualified lead. What are the parameters around an AE actually accepting a lead from the BDR? What does that look like exactly? So all of that needs to be, clearly defined in a playbook, or even in let's say some type of master document if you don't have a playbook. But all of that needs to be clearly defined.
So this highlights the importance of marketing, sales, and product to have communication, at least when they're creating the playbook, because you might end up selling something that your delivery team cannot produce, or cannot produce on following the terms that you negotiated with the client or you negotiated with the lead. So it's very important so that you don't end up, because like you said, salespeople tend to be more opportunistic. They try to close the deal. They try to bring in that revenue for the company, and that's their job. You can't blame them. That's the whole reason they're there.
Right.
But then they're going to try to close a lead if they check all the boxes. So you got to make sure those boxes have been approved by the delivery team or the product team or whoever is responsible for delivering. Otherwise, your client is going to be very pissed off, and your delivery team is going to be very pissed off.
100%. And that's why the sales enablement discipline is, extremely important, because that is what is going to serve as the bridge between, like I said, marketing, product, customer success is a big one as well, because that's post-sale. That's who has to deal with the customer after after they've bought. And you need to be aligned there as well, because you want to make sure that what messaging you're putting out to the sales team, that customer success is on board and they can deliver. And I think it's sort of the core of all of that is creating a seamless, customer experience, because that's what's going to get them to renew. That's what's going to allow for customer success or an account manager to upsell, throughout the duration of the contract. You've got to create that amazing customer experience and that amazing customer journey. And it starts with marketing and all the way over to customer success. And that's kind of where sales enablement really is able to have their hand in all of that, and to be able to orchestrate it in a way that, all of these different disciplines who communicate so differently, sales enablement creates that streamline and makes the experience that much better.
So you mentioned that the customer experience and customer success. In your experience, what are some really good success indicators that would tell the company, oh, we're on the right track, we're doing the right thing?
Yeah, so I can speak from a sales enablement perspective, meaning maybe some metrics that they can, sort of look at. I've always been part of data-driven organizations. And so, metrics like, maybe like a conversion rate, like a close rate, your win-loss rate, your competitive win-loss rate are, some good indicators. Also new hire onboarding, time to first, meeting booked, or time to first sale for a new AE who may be coming on board. Those are all going to be indicators that sales enablement is, being effective. Also on the customer success side, the net promoter score, or any, sort of surveys that are going out to, employees, soliciting sort of how is sales enablement doing, direct feedback from the people that sales enablement is working with. And then, obviously, the culture that you're trying to build, you're getting positive feedback from everyone. So, it's a combination, I think, of being data driven and having specific metrics, but there's also that human element to sales enablement as well, because we work with so many different people at different, in different spaces across the org. So, we sort of have to understand how to navigate each of those. And feedback is, really critical with that as well. It's a little more gray, but it's definitely necessary.
Yeah. So there's a lot of metrics here that you could start tracking. I think it's not a good idea to track all of them or all of the metrics. I would definitely encourage people to rewind. And I'll probably add this in the notes, in the show notes. But there's a bunch of metrics that you can track to make sure that sales enablement, marketing, and sales are doing a good job. I would not apply all of them blindly, because that sometimes you can have metrics that don't play well with each other. Let's say win-loss rate, for instance. Having a win-loss rate or low, quote-unquote low, it's not always a bad thing. It might mean that you're very selective in your process, but you just got to find out for yourself if that's the case for your business, because different businesses will have different parameters to what they consider a good close rate. If you're going after a very select type of clientele, you're not going to have a high close rate. I definitely don't think luxury goods and luxury items and high ticket services have a high close rate. And that's the whole point. They charge very high prices, but they're not for everyone, right?
So I would say that the win-loss rate is more indicative of, yes, are you talking to the right person, right? That's always the biggest thing, right? Are you even talking to the right person? But it also allows for you to see where there are gaps in maybe your sales conversations. It also allows for you to see if there are gaps in who marketing is trying to attract. Are they attracting the right people? Is their messaging, relevant? Is their messaging, attracting the right types of people? And so that's sort of what a win-loss will allow for you to see, is a couple of different areas. Yes, you are not going to win every single, deal, obviously, that walks through the door. But to what you said, if it's a high-end, sort of boutique type of agency, it's not for everyone, then I think what that tells you is that marketing needs to go after those who it is for and not waste time on those who it isn't for. So, and then again, that's where, market intelligence and buyer intelligence come in. Are we even going after the right people? Are we attracting the right people? Why or why not? All of that needs to be taken into consideration. And that's where you'll see your win-loss rate, have a huge change.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you have any software recommendations for people, or do you even need a software to do this? Can you just do this on Google Docs, or what would be your recommendation?
Yeah, yes, there are sales enablement platforms out there. I've never used one. I have used more of the sales tools. So sales tools like a CRM, Salesforce, which I highly recommend a CRM. Salesforce is definitely the go-to, because if you're going to be data-driven in your approach, which every organization should be, or every business should be, you need to be data driven. And that's, definitely something where I see a lot of mistakes happening is an organization doesn't collect enough data. And, I'll kind of touch on that in a little bit. But so the tools that I've used are Gong. Gong allows for you to record conversations, but it's not just a call recording tool. It's very robust. It allows for you to interact with your sales teams. It provides, call analysis. There's some, AI happening in there. It's a great tool. I've used Gong, and I've also used Chorus, who is a competitor of Gong. So either one, just, demo kind of both. I don't want to lean toward one or the other. And then I would say, Outreach, which, a lot of people are familiar with. It's basically to help you set up your email sequences. It tracks, productivity as well, reply rate, open rate. So sales reps have access to all of that information. And they can, again, send their emails that way. It's, you can do it where it's fully automated, and that's what, most will use it for. But you can also customize your messaging as well. So I would say Gong, Salesforce, Outreach. I'm familiar with HighSpot as well. HighSpot is a content repository, but it's very robust. You can search. It will provide, content or documents that are relevant to, your particular, accounts. So if you need to send out some type of case study to, a CRO at Wells Fargo, HighSpot will, provide some recommendations to you, right there, and they'll say, hey, send out this case study. Here's a case study for Bank of America. They might be interested in that. But, I've heard some kind of mixed things about HighSpot, that, some people love it. Some people don't really use it. But essentially it is a content repository, not recommended for early stage. It's not necessary. It's really necessary when you start to get a ton of content created. You get a ton of case studies. And, literally there's thousands of pages of content and documents. And you need a way to organize it. And then obviously Google Drive, right?
Yeah.
I'm a huge, Google Drive person myself. So, if that's where you need to start, then that's where you start. Google Slides and create some nice looking decks, and, outline your SLAs in Google Docs. So yeah, I mean, it all depends what stage you're at, but those are a few tools and resources that I've accessed.
Yeah, I'm going to throw another one in there. I'm a big fan of Notion, and I know a lot of people are, and Notion has a CRM template. So yeah, if you wanna start with, you still don't know if you want to invest in a CRM, but you probably should. But let's say you're tight on cash and you want to get started with tracking your sales process, definitely do it. It doesn't matter the tool. Even like at the end of the day, they all sort of do the same thing. As your business grows and you get more complex sales processes, you're gonna wanna start tracking all of these things that we've mentioned, all of these different metrics. But definitely don't let that software be an excuse not to track what's happening with your sales process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the most common mistakes that I see, in sales enablement with an organization is not collecting enough data. You have got to be a data-driven company. And, let's say that you start and you're not collecting data that is going to be helpful. In 6 months, 12 months down the line, you are going to be kicking yourself when you have started growing and you need to get more targeted in your approach. It's critical to start collecting as much data as possible of, that buyer and their entire journey.
Absolutely. So when you're just starting out, or you're still a very small company, I would assume the CEO would be the person that would take the initiative to set up this entire sales infrastructure with a CRM, a playbook, training the sales team. Do you have any advice for people who are in that position?
So, I mean, it truly depends. At Tribyl, we were very small, and you are aware. And so, the CEO wasn't the one who sort of did all of that. I was the one who did all of that, where I went out and researched tools, onboarded, doing all of that. However, it reminds me that, one other thing that is really important, if you're a team of 10, right? If you're a team of 10, they're absolutely, for sales enablement, or a function of it is going to be implemented, then there absolutely has to be a executive buy-in, leadership buy-in. That this is what this sales enablement function is going to do. Here is what they're going to do and how they're going to do it and when, and there has to be that buy-in, because, especially as you grow, when you are trying to do some coaching, maybe for a sales rep who might be, kind of set in their ways, if you will, and you're trying to do some coaching, and, it can create a little bit of friction, right? It can create a little bit of friction. So it's important to have some buy-in there. It is also important to have buy-in because sales enablement, we need, some sales reps' time occasionally. We need their feedback. We need to understand what it is that they're hearing. We try to minimize the time that we are taking them actually away from selling, but we definitely need that time. And so, again, sort of that leadership buy-in comes in really important. And then obviously at a higher level, supporting, larger initiatives like product launches, or, new features, that type of thing. So that's absolutely huge. But, just to kind of go back to what you said, what I've seen is if it's a 2-person company, you've got a CEO and like a sales rep, then sure, the CEO would probably be the one to be doing everything. But if you have, even it's like a smaller team of, 10 to 50, typically it's going to be someone who serves in sort of that sales enablement type of function. It could be even somebody from the marketing team as well. It truly depends on, who has what background and who has the time to do this. And, but they just need to look at that as an organization.
Yeah, I would think it's a small sacrifice in terms of time and resources that you are going. It's sort of like an investment. You're investing in the development and the growth of your own company. So yeah, you're going to have to use the time of your team to set all of these processes and all of these procedures. But once you do, your sales process is going to run a lot more smoothly. So it's definitely
100%. Yeah, 100%. The investment that you put in now, it's, and because there is an ongoing piece to that. You do need to, as the market changes, as personas, change throughout time, as your product changes, you need to be, constantly iterating on these documents and your messaging. What the messaging that could be working in Q1 is no longer going to be working in Q4. So you're going to have someone who, is updating that information and who's keeping their, sort of ear to the ground and hearing what the sales reps are saying, just as time goes on. So I don't want to make it seem like it's a one-shot thing, a one-shot investment. It is a heavy lift at the beginning if you don't have a sales enablement, function. But then there's constant iteration. Sales enablement is an iterative process, if anything.
Yeah, it's a product that's alive. And I feel like in order for you to make sure that you're constantly recalibrating, you have to set up a periodic review of all of this with your entire team. So make sure
100%. Yes.
Gather all the feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. Sales enablement should be, there should be if not weekly, a bi-weekly cadence of meeting with other departments. So if there's sort of a company-wide marketing meeting, sales enablement 100% needs to be in that. If there's a company-wide sales meeting, guess who else is in there? Product, guess who else is in there? Customer success. So, it needs to happen. And most of those meetings are happening weekly anyway. So that's critical, though, that sales enablement attends all of those, because that's how they create.
Yeah, I would also like to maybe mention that it's probably valuable to think in terms of function. So sales enablement is a function. It's not necessarily one person. You don't need to go out and hire a salesperson or a sales enablement person. That could be a function that you can split between maybe a person that's in marketing and the CEO, or someone from sales and someone from marketing. Although, as you said, it probably the initiative usually comes from marketing because they have all the material and they're used to researching the audience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. You don't have to hire someone specifically for sales enablement. You can absolutely start with someone in marketing. It is a heavy lift. But I've seen it done. People from marketing typically, sales enablement practitioners at this point have a lot of different backgrounds, but I would say that the most common are going to be, people who have a sales background, or they have, a marketing background of some type. But again, you have, there's actually, I was listening to a podcast the other day, actually, and there's a sales enablement practitioner. He is out of Israel. His name is Abner, and he was actually an engineer prior to becoming a sales enablement practitioner. And he has a totally, non-traditional background, but it works because he is so detailed, and he's all about data, and he's all about creating graphs and charts, and and then even in the sales enablement world, like practitioners vary. Like I am almost the complete opposite, where I have a huge sales background, so I am less detailed, less I am data driven, but I guarantee you he's like 1,000 times more data driven than I am. So it just varies, but, to answer the question, 100% can start from marketing.
Yeah, and I guess it would also depend on the type of people that you have in your company and the type of company you are.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, Crystal, thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge. It definitely goes to show that sales is as much a science as it is an art. And there's so much you can do and implement at any level of growth in your company. Where can people go to connect with you, ask you questions? I don't know if you want people to ask you questions. Yeah,
absolutely. LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where they can go. If you want to share, my profile, with anyone who, comes to you, by all means, go ahead and do that. Please message me. I can, help out as much as I can to get things started.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. And thanks again for your time and for sharing with us all of this, knowledge. That's it. That's it for this episode. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed. I really appreciate it.
Take care.